My name is Marek Rudak. I'm a love proficiency coach. Thank you so much for joining me in my YouTube channel. Today's episode is going to be me talking a bit more about an article that is linked right below called Aligning the Mind to Follow the Heart. So, as it turns out, I have a perfect example of me starting my very own new podcast with a colleague of mine, Trevor. And this is a classic case of aligning the mind to follow heart, in the sense that I remember, like, 3-4 years ago, there was like a lot of things I did because I was unhappy with my work, with my relationships, where I was in life. There was all these things that I tried to do. So one of the things I did is I went to this meetup called Startup. I believe it's called Startup Circle. Essentially what it was kind of like a equivalent of the local Shark Tank, where these different folks came over and then just shared their ideas, and then there was like a group of judges that would offer their opinions, but there would be no buyouts, they were just opinions. Long story short, in that meetup, I met this one guy who said, "I'm a podcaster." And I was like, wow, a podcaster. I wish I could do that. But I was like, man, I wasn't born to do that stuff. And then I remember a few years later, I did this one talk at my church, and it was my sister, and I have to call her and remind her of that story. It was my sister's like, "Man, Marek, you should do a podcast." And I was like, "Kasia, I love you, my sister, but come on, I can't do a podcast." And then fast forward like a week ago or so, a colleague of mine, Terry Weaver, by the way, Terry, if you're watching this, thank you so much. You did this one video where you talk about the goals for the next year, and I was like, oh crap, I should come up with some goals. And then again, this podcast thing came. I was like, wow, I wish, it would be so awesome if I could do something like a podcast. Then about a week ago, I had lunch with a good friend of mine, Trevor, and I didn't even know how it came up, but I just shared this idea of mine that I wish, or a desire of mine, to start a podcast. And I was like, I know I have this dream in my heart, but something seems to be missing. And guess what? He's like, let's do it. Let's do it together. And I was like, yep, that's that logical piece that was missing for me to implement the idea. A colleague of mine to do this with, to walk this journey with me together. Because the funny thing is that the issues of the heart, how our guard is blocked off by our experiences, that the walls that are built around from our past, is something that we basically talk about every single time we get together. So why not turn into a podcast and start with somebody kind of like a workout buddy who shares the same passions and desires. So long story short, I just recorded the 4th episode today, and I still have to figure out how to put it on iTunes, but that's minor details. It'll be out fairly soon. The point is, my friends, is that if you feel that there's a desire that was placed in your heart and you're not quite sure what to do about it, whether you feel afraid or you don't feel qualified, or like in my case, you feel like something's missing, please share it with your friends, share with your colleagues, because it does two things. First of all, the fact that you share your intention with other people makes it real. You speak it out loud and you give it life. And second of all, you'll never know what's going to come out of that conversation. Like in my case, I found a colleague of mine, that's who I needed to do the podcast. But in your case, it might be a connection or an idea or encouragement, just exactly what you need to take you to the next step. And as you do that, you'll find how these desires that were inside of you that seemed so laughable to your brain, all of a sudden they become very real. And then it almost becomes unthinkable not to pursue them. So my friends, if this provided value to you, please share and subscribe. And until next time, God bless, and talk to you soon.